Okay, everybody, page 79 in your reading guide, please. And we will do our prayers for student and study. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right, thank you. So before I give your papers back, and I need you guys to listen, okay? One thing we need to not do is have conversations, with each other while the class is going on. Give conversations with me. I want to have conversations with you. This is the paper I gave you. You need to look it over, not now. You need to look it over with your parents. Because for some of you, it's just practically perfect in every way, just like Mary Poppins, right? But for some of you, there are some basic things that you're not doing. And starting next week, I'm going to give the paper back and ask you to redo it. Not redo the whole paper, but fix it, right? So you want to do it right the first time. And when you're in middle school, there's just certain things you ought to know. Like, if I mark on your paper, you do comma splices, you need to stop, all right? And what is a comma splice? It is when I take two sentences and I just join them with a comma. The sun was shining. I went outside. How many sentences is that? It's obviously two. How do you know it's two, though? I said it's obvious. What? You all just said two. How do you know there's two sentences there?
Because
There's two verbs, but, okay. This is a comma splice. But what if I do this? So, the sun was shining, so I went outside.
That's better.
That
is one sentence.
That's okay. And we might say, why? Why does those two little letters make a difference between this is grammatically incorrect and this is correct? Here it is. If this goes away, I have a complete thought. The sun is shining. I have a complete thought. I went outside. We can't ever just splice them together with a comma, but we can put them together with a connector word, a conjunction, they're called. So if I do that, the sun is shining, so I went outside. Look what I have now. The sun was shining. Complete thought. Wonderful. Now listen carefully, guys. So I went outside. Is that a complete thought? If I walked up to you and said, so I ate ice cream, you would kind of wonder some things, wouldn't you? Like, what happened? Mrs. Ferguson, what tragedy happened in your life that led you to eat ice cream? Or if I just walked up and said, but I don't like it. Yeah, I was thinking not it. It was not because I do like ice cream very much. If I start a sentence like that, it's not a complete thought. When I use one of those connector words, I no longer have two complete thoughts that can be by themselves. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Now, how will you know that you've done it? Well, you gotta proofread your paper, right? I hope, fingers crossed, but that everybody proofreads, but if you don't, just know you should never, ever, ever, ever just write something and not read it again and just give it. You should not ever, ever, ever read it off the computer screen. Print it out. If you proofread it off the screen, you will not do a good job. You will not. Print out a copy with your pencil in your hand or your pen and go through. And every time you get to an end mark, make sure that everything that came before it is a complete thought and only one complete thought, right? Because the opposite is a fragment, right? So now this is a fragment. So I went outside. Here's something that is very popular. The man, that man lives in the red house. This is what I get students to do sometimes. End mark. Which is next door. Is which is next door a sentence? It's not. We have to make it part of the sentence that came before. So that would be a fragment. So if I write on your paper, comma splice, CS, I'll just start marking it CS or fragment. I'm going to ask you to fix it. Now for most of you, I know you typed it and it just, like, I toyed with the idea of making everybody handwrite their papers, but I know everybody would just, because it's easier to catch your mistakes, but then it would be harder for you to fix it, and that way you'd be more careful the first time. But anyway, I decided not to do that because, for various reasons. Also, it's easier for me to read them sometimes when they're typed. But I am going to start marking them and giving it back. And remember, starting next week, you're going to get a C, which doesn't mean like A, B, C, D, F. It means complete. This is a complete paper. Or incomplete. It's not complete because it's got mistakes. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to, like, you misspelled this word. No. Like, everybody misspells words. That's crazy. I wouldn't mark that. I might correct the spelling, but I'm going to ask you to redo it. You know. If you, I mean, like one little tiny mistake, I might just circle it. Do you know what I mean? But if it's habitual, I feel like the only way to get you to not do it is to make you correct it. Does that make sense? But here's something that I found out, not just you guys, but a lot of the students in my other class too don't know. And so I wanted to talk about it because a lot of you had conversations and you use quotes. So we always have, almost always when we have a quote, have something like he said, she yelled, you know, the explaining words, right? He whispered, she shouted, something like that. I'm just going to use he said, but it could be not those words, right? He said. And then we have what he said. I love cats. Okay. Now, and if you guys, like if you gave conversation and I re-punctuated all of your things, look at that. But you can also jot this down if you want to. It's pretty easy. The saying words always get separated with a comma from the quote. And the thing they said goes in quotes. Remember to put quotes on both sides. Sometimes we switch it around, don't we? We put the quote in front. I, and then we don't put a period here, we put a comma here. He said. So do you see the pattern? The saying words always get separated by a comma from the actual quote, except in this case. When you want to be really, really firm about it, you can just use an exclamation point. This is okay. Or if he's not sure, I love cats. That's okay. But if it would be a period, it's no longer a period here. It's a comma. That's the general rule. So if you want to be safe and you don't want to be fancy and ask questions or exclamations, it's always separated by comma. That's all there's to it. There's a third case. I often, he said, feed cats. And do you see, but the rule holds. The saying words are separated from the quote by commas. In this case, I have to use two. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you your papers back now. And I didn't put the C or the IC or anything, and just chill, all right? And these are the things I'm targeting. If I said, this is a fragment or a run-on sentence or a comma splice, that's something, like take a look at it. Take a or sit down with your mom, all right? Or if I said, I changed your quotes. If I fix that, then learn to do this. Although often we're not going to be doing quotes. So incoming, Emma. I'm really bad. Oh, that was actually pretty good. Oh, Preston's. Oh, I've got the knack today. All right. Oh, I lost it. Lost it. Juliana. And you know what, Emma, I'm just going to, because I know that it bothers you, like you didn't have any of those things. Like there were just a few words that you misspelled and I might have altered them.
I thought my dad looked over this and I spelled them right.
You know what?
Maybe it didn't.
It's
Maybe
totally
I'm
fine.
wrong.
You know what? You didn't do anything that is problematic. Okay, that is Evelyn. Evelyn is not here.
How did you only do one paragraph?
That's what I did.
Yes,
It
I.
specifically said 3.
Oh, yeah, but then that's another thing. If it's 3 paragraphs, it has to be 3 paragraphs. Oh, I'm sorry, Julia. See,
I'm glad my
Huh?
siblings-
I'm forever gonna go in a Juliana direction when I see Julia this year, even though I already gave you yours back.
I'm glad my small siblings
Olivia?
were satisfactory.
Oh, that was interesting. Okay, there's one with no name. Could it be yours? I think it's all sporty. Okay, which was fun. Again, I am not trying to be mean, but I've been teaching this class for 13 years now, and every year I mark people's papers, and every year they don't do it, right? And at the end of the year, I'm still getting sentence fragments and comma splices. What do I need to do? And we're just going to have to redo it, right? But I am not in the business of making your life miserable. So if you're not in the habit of making a certain mistake and you just had a little slip up, it's like, okay, well, everybody makes mistakes. But so I've had what? This is the third paper. No, I just collected the third paper. That's the second paper. So I've had 2 papers, and so if I notice the same thing on both papers, and you've had time to get feedback from me, like, okay, this is a habitual thing we need to work on. All right, yes, Emma.
Do I have to rewrite my paper with correcting the spelling mistakes?
No, I am never going to ask you to rewrite to correct spelling mistakes,
Okay then.
ever, because
Then stop running out of lead.
some people are just better spellers than others. I think it's something we should all work on. We can all get to be better spellers, but I know some people just don't see it in their heads. And but if you suspect you don't know how to spell it, please consult a dictionary, which I know is tricky because you kind of have to know how to spell it a little bit to look it up in the dictionary. This is the problem with I don't know how to spell it, look it up. If you don't know if the second letter is an A, an E, or an I, or an O, it's going to be hard to look it up. Okay. While we are talking about papers, we are going to do one more of these stories. Okay? Oh, thank you. Oh, does it say ask about quotations? Okay, I already did that. I just wanted to make sure I showed you. Yes, thank you. We're going to do one more. So remember, it's 3 paragraphs. I want to have an outline given me. Here, let's just write all this down. Find a blank piece of paper. This is your homework for next week. Make an outline somewhere. We're not going to make it together this time. I feel like we've done 3 of them together and we probably got this. Remember, what goes in the first paragraph?
Character descriptions, like setting the scene,
Character and setting. Beautiful. What goes in the second paragraph?
the problem,
What's the problem? What goes in the third paragraph?
found the solution.
Fix it up. Right. So I want you to make an outline, and it's, and then write the paper. I'm going to tell you more about write paper. Write paper and add simile. Maybe I should put for some of you maybe proofread paper to make sure you do that. Now, you might be asking, what is this story about? I am going to give you options. And for some of you, you're going to love the option. Some of you, it's going to scare you and you're going to say, I don't want to do that. So that's why the options. Option number 1. You can do exactly what we just did. You can pick another story out of the Greek myths. Any story. And just make an outline and tell it. I don't care which story. I would pick a shorter one. But some of you asked, and I think some of you might be Christian and Luke. Some of you asked, well, can I change it around? Can I do something cool? Okay, here's how you can change it around. Now, Christian and Luke, calm down and listen. Because it might not be as easy as it sounds. You can keep the same problem, but invent all new different characters and situation. So, what do I mean by that? You guys, most of you, wrote about Arachne. What's the problem in the story of Arachne? Okay, she's better than Athena. So can you, that's very specific. She boasted she was better than Athena. What's the major, what if I don't believe in Athena? What if I don't believe in those gods? What's the major problem with Arachne that applies even if she weren't some ancient Greek lady? She's prideful. She boasts, and someone calls her out on it, right? In that case, it's Athena. That's the problem. So, you could write the story of some football player who says he's the best on the team, and then, somebody says, oh, are you really, and there's the big game and it shows him up or something like that. And then I don't know what the equivalent, like he turned into a football at the end. I don't know how that would work.
He gets kicked off of his team.
He gets kicked off the team. See, that would be the same problem, but it would be a whole different story. Or let's look at one that you read. How about Narcissus? He's the guy who starves to death because he's staring at himself in the pool and he won't go away. What's his problem?
He can't stop looking at himself.
Yeah, so that's the specific problem, Christian, but listen to the other. Pride. Well, not pride exactly. He's
Narcissistic?
Yeah, he is indeed narcissistic, which is why we call it that. But what is he doing staring in that pool? Admiring himself excessively. He thinks he's so awesome. And you know what? Maybe he was.
We'll never know.
We'll never know because now he's a flower. But so you could write a story of somebody who's self-absorbed, right? And it gets them into trouble. Maybe they don't starve to death, but maybe they lose their friends, right? Because they're just sick and tired of listening to them talk about themselves all the time and carry a mirror around all the time and do their hair. I don't know. Let's try another one. How about, what is the problem of, Midas? What's Midas's problem?
He loves gold.
Yeah, and what do we call somebody who loves gold or stuff like that?
Greedy.
He's greedy. He is selfish too. Because he only thinks about himself, doesn't he? He doesn't realize, hold on, what if I hug my daughter and she turns into gold? That stinks for my daughter. But his main problem is greed. So you could write the story of somebody who was so greedy they wanted something that wasn't good for them. Right? What? Sauron. Or Saruman too, right?
I don't know. I can't remember all the characters.
Does that make sense to you guys? Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm keeping the problem. The problem is greed that gets you into trouble. The problem is self-absorption and being in love with yourself so much that you lose everything. Or the problem is, what was the other one? Boast. You're so prideful in boasting that it gets you into trouble because you find out someone is better than you. Or someone is more powerful than you, or whatever you're boasting about. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you've been waiting, you can just make up the story, but keep the problem. Here's what I'd like you to do. Somewhere, like at the top of the page, somewhere, tell me what story the problem's from, right? Okay, that was a good question too. Tell me this is from Midas. This is from nurse. It doesn't have to be those. Those are just examples. But do we need to practice more of those, or does everybody see how to target the problem? You want to do another one? That's the proper response. You're like, oh, I don't know. How about what is the problem with Icarus? He's the guy whose dad made wings so they could escape. What's Icarus's problem?
His name was Icarus.
Okay, just a second. What did you say?
I thought his name was Icarus.
Oh, I always say Icarus. What? Ann, what is it?
He went too far up to the sun.
Okay, so that's a very specific problem. What did he not do?
He didn't listen.
He didn't obey his dad. His dad told him to do something that would keep him alive. So, I mean, the very simple story would be the story of, it would be a tragic story, some child who plays in the street habitually, despite the fact that and this would not have a good ending. I'm sorry, if you choose that problem, well, here's the thing. Some of those problems have bad endings. You don't have to have a bad ending. They could learn from the mistake, right? Midas doesn't, or the greedy person doesn't have to lose everything before he comes to his senses. The kid doesn't have to die because he disobeyed his parents if you want him to, but he ought to at least have a close call. You know what I mean? Something to wake him up that he should obey. Let's try one more. What is the problem in the story of, that's a weird one.
I got one.
Okay, Emma.
Pandora?
Oh, Pandora. What is the problem with Pandora?
Disobedience.
Disobedience and curiosity.
Sorry, Grace.
Yeah. So you could, hey ladies, you could write a story about someone who's very curious about something. They wander off because they want to find something out, or they wander into a cave because they're curious about who lives there, or what have you. All right? Julia, does that make a little more sense now? Do you think you could do that? But here's the thing, guys. If you sit down and you say, I have no clue what to do. Did your family all come downstairs? Or are they still upstairs? Okay. I was going to tell them we can come down, like there's other rooms down here, because there's not toys. Okay, never mind. No. I'll check with Mrs. Clark and make sure it's okay for them to be up there for the whole year. But I was thinking there's 2 other rooms out there, and they could just be nearby. If you don't feel comfortable targeting a problem and building a story around it and inventing your own, just retell one of the stories flat out from the book. This is an option. Some of you just love making up stories, and you're really good at it. And some people are like, oh my gosh, it's scary. I don't want to have to make up. If that's you, don't make up a story. Just retell it. But I wanted to have a simile. I took a look. Oh, yes, Claire.
Do we have to, if we practically rewrite the story, do we have to have an outline?
Yes, I want to see an outline. I want to see a 3-paragraph outline. We've made 3 of them together already, and you have it in your book. Do you know what I mean? That first week, you had the template for the outline if you can't remember.
Can we make more than 3 paragraphs?
Let's keep it to 3 paragraphs.
Like this?
Yeah, exactly. And just staple or attach your outline to it, and so that I know, how you came up with it. All right? Yes. Oh, yes, go right ahead. So I asked for similes, and I brought some similes in because some of you gave me some, everybody gave an attempt at a simile. We'll put it that way. And I'm not judging your similes because similes are kind of hard. In fact, you know this because when I was just trying to make up similes on the fly, I didn't do a very good job because it's hard. But we're going to work on these. We're going to put a simile in every paper we do all year. So by the end of the year, we'll have some good simile practice. But I brought in some really good examples, okay? Here's one. Some of them are from the Bible. And by the way, heart is a deer. Maybe this is like King James Version Bible. Heart, H-A-R-T, a heart is a deer. As the heart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. So picture a deer. He's running around in the woods, and he's getting hot, and he's really thirsty, and I wish I could find a stream. I wish I could find a stream. And oh, it's water. As the deer pants after water, that's how my soul pants after God. Do you see? Is my soul literally running through the woods? Is my soul literally thirsty? Not for water. But it is thirsty for something, right? So that's a really, really good simile. That is a simile I would never in a million years come up with myself without help. But David came up with that. This one's from Proverbs. This is a fun one. I feel like Christian particularly enjoy this one. You probably know this one. As a jewel of gold in a pig's snout, so is a fair woman without discretion. A woman without wisdom, a foolish woman, but, pretty, is like putting gold jewelry in a pig nose. It's not fitting. It's like she's decorated all pretty with her looks and her clothes, but she's not wise. She doesn't make good choices. She's adorned with all this beauty for nothing, because her insides are kind of like a pig. I know, it's not very nice, but it's very blunt. Okay, this one's a little more normal. This one's from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, yeah.
Yay. Edmund saw the drop for a second in midair, shining like a diamond. Right? It's not a diamond. It's not hard. It was the drop to make Turkish delight, right? She pours it out and it makes Turkish delight. He sees the drop and it's shining. How is it like a diamond? It's not hard. It doesn't cut glass. You don't put it in a ring. It just shines. But it doesn't just shine. If you've seen a diamond, and you play around in the light a little bit and it makes all the sparkly colors, it was like that. So when we say like a diamond, it's like, oh, yeah, shiny. But if you think about what diamonds look like, it's like, oh, yeah. And sometimes you can see different colors in it, and it's amazing. All right, I think I've got more. Oh. Okay, I'm going to give you guys these. They're awesome. All right, we are about to read, after we get done with this book, we're about to read a story of the Trojan War. Okay? And, by the way, we're finishing this book this week. Just finish it off.
Yay. Too easy.
So, there is a poem, and it is a very long poem. I'm actually rereading it again in English right now, by Homer. It's called the Iliad, and it's about the Trojan War. It's not about the whole war. And Homer is known for doing something, the author. He's known for similes, but he's known for enormous similes. They're called epic similes. So it's not just like it was shining like a diamond. It's like it was shining, the drop was in the air, shining like a diamond, which a man holds in his hand, set in a ring, as he kneels down to ask the woman he loves to marry him. And she weeps and says yes, and they spend the rest of their lives together in bliss. Okay, like that sort of simile. One side of it is always just goes on and on and on. So these are kind of shortish ones. You'll see what I mean. Listen to this one. Like a man in his helplessness, who, crossing a great plain, stands at the edge of a fast-running river that dashes seaward and watches it thundering into the white water and leaps back a pace backward. So now Tydeus' son gave back. Okay, so this warrior leaps back. How does he leap back? Like a man going through a plain, and he comes to a river, and the river's rushing to the sea, and it's foaming, and he leaps back because he doesn't want to fall in. It's quite a simile. I don't expect you to do a simile like that, but if you want to, I don't know, go for it. Okay, here's another one. Like some ox of the herd, preeminent among the others, a bull who stands conspicuous in the huddling cattle. Such was the son of Atreus, as Zeus made him that day. How was the son of Atreus? Agamemnon was his name. What was he like? He's like an ox in the herd. He's a bull. He's strong. He's preeminent among all the other cattle. Like, oh my goodness. And those are short ones for Homer. One of them I just read because I was rereading it a couple nights ago. It's like the warriors are fighting over somebody's dead body because they want to, one side who killed him wants to take all his armor off and steal it. And the other side wants to drag his body back so they can bury it properly, right? And so it says they're like flies swarming over the milk pail. I love this. Because if you've ever been on a farm, like been around animals, stuff like the flies swarming around something, this is what the warriors were like swarming over the body. It's very cool. Here's some very, very simple examples. These are student examples. The bird is as loud as a train. It doesn't have wheels. It's not, I was going to say it's not going anywhere, but it probably is. But it's just in the sound. Or, my cat is like a pillow. It is not stuffed with foam. Don't stuff your cat with foam. It's mean. But it's soft, right? Oh, here's a trickier one. You tell me how they're the same. The mountains are like medicine for my soul.
Very clear air.
Okay, so they could literally be, but does your soul need clean air or does your body need clear air? How were the mountains medicine for your soul?
Well, if your soul is feeling down and about like depression, a beautiful sight like the mountains could definitely cure it.
Yes. Yes. So it's like medicine, not because you drink it, not because it tastes bad, but because it makes you better, right? It makes you better. Okay, that's the last. That's the end of that. Does that help? Does that, so similes, we tend to think, I want to choose something that looks like that. That's the first place like the carpet is like the lawn, or, the fan is like a little bush, or whatever. I always think what it looks like. It's not. Those are really bad. But you can think what it sounds like, what it does, how it makes you feel, how it feels, literally feels, like the cat. What? Like foam. Yeah, you can use your other senses other than just what it looks like. Okay? So give it another try, and we're going to give it many, many tries, and your similes will just get better and better because we're going to get a lot of practice. So that's all we're adding to this, right? Oh, wait a minute. Is that true? That's not true. You know what? You know what? No, we're not adding anything. Because I'm just changing my mind. I think I didn't even know. And then can I just add alliteration? Okay, thank you. All right, we can change our mind if we want to.
I do want to do an alliteration.
Okay, you can do it if you want to.
I'm sure I did an alliteration in the paper I gave you.
You, you probably did. If you want to, it just means repeating the same starting sound like I just did. I think I may have put in the email that we're doing that, but you just assure your parents. Mrs. Ferguson said nix on the alliteration. Alliteration is optional, okay? She said. And it's going to be that way sometimes. Sometimes I change my mind, but I already wrote the email. Yeah. If your parents aren't sure, they can call me or email me, but you guys are like 12, 13 years, like 11, 12, 13. You're old enough to get the direction from me and know what to do. But I realize sometimes your mom stands over you and says, but it says that.
Yeah.
So you can just, I will answer the questions. And if I can remember before I send the email out, I'll just delete that part, but I don't always remember. Okay, let's talk about Sparta. Let's open your books to page 7. What do we think about Sparta? Do we like them?
No.
Why do we not like them?
Christian, really cool. Like,
Yeah, Christian, you seem like a Sparta-ish sort.
not even close.
I wouldn't mind it if I survived.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it?
You're not surviving.
If you survive, that is the trick, isn't it? The first question I asked you is, what do the Spartans spend much of their time doing? Yeah, either training for battle, and sports were part of that, right?
Eating black broth.
And eating black broth, which is Seriously, it was notorious in the ancient world. It's like, oh, when Sparta had to eat that black broth. Nobody knows what was in it, but apparently it was disgusting. Was that your question? Yeah, I have no idea. We don't want the recipe. So they're either preparing to fight or they're actually fighting someone. Yes,
Do they have
Brent.
any idea of what was in it? Because they would have to have pots that.
Oh, they knew what was in it. It's just we don't know because it was a long time ago.
Like, do we even have like a.
Oh, I see. Well, shh, guys. The problem is that we wouldn't know necessarily that that's what was in that pot, or yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they could resurrect a recipe from residue. Like they could tell it had olive oil in it or something like that, but it might be hard to resurrect an entire recipe from that. But that's a good question. That's a good thought. I think somebody should do that and then make up a pot of black broth and make someone else eat it.
Serve it to them and say, here's some.
Oh, so, shh, hey guys. We're so excited today. I love that. Could everybody turn, could you keep, like stick your pencil or something where the questions are, and let's turn back to your map on page 75. And let's mark where Sparta is. I don't think we've marked Sparta on our maps yet. Sparta is in the Peloponnese, which is the sticky down blob. That is not proper geographical description of anything. Sticky down blob is not a technical term. But it is here. So find 75 and find the Peloponnese. And then Sparta is right here. Do you see that the bottom of the Peloponnese is sort of like a fork? Yeah. It's got 3 sticky down places. And Sparta is sort of above the middle one, the middle tine on the fork. Just go up a little bit and mark Sparta for me.
Sparta seems like it's about 50 miles away from Olympia.
Is that about like that? Yeah. Remember, all of these places are pretty close together, aren't they? Except we don't hang out with each other because many mountains. Also, nobody really wanted to hang out with the Spartans a lot for various reasons. What? Something might end up happening to you. Not unless, it might just be unpleasant briefly, unless you are a helot. And we will, well, actually, why don't you tell me, who are the helots? This is the next question. Emma.
They were former inhabitants of lands conquered by Sparta, and they were made slaves by the Spartans.
Yeah. The Spartans enslaved them. They were the locals. They were the, we would say the indigenous peoples. You know, they were the people living there. And the Spartan ancestors came in and just said, look at all these sitting ducks that would make great slaves. Now, I guess this is a good time to talk about something. The ancient world is built on slavery. The only reason we have epic poems and poetry of smaller, sort and treatises on history and politics and everything is because those people didn't have to work. They had slaves to do it. They have to make dinner. They have to clean their own clothes. They had slaves. And so almost every people in the world has had slaves. And the wonderful thing is that the church eventually basically put an end to that. It took a long time, but there are still places in this world that have slaves, all right? So the helots, the people who were already there, were the slaves of the Spartans. This is why, in case you wondered, they can spend all day doing sports and training for battle, because they don't have a job. Someone else grows all their food and prepares all their food and cleans their clothes and cleans their houses.
Do they get paid for battle?
Do the Spartans get paid?
Yeah, like do people pay taxes? No?
No. But the government, the Spartan government, say, would provide everything you needed. Like they would provide food for you. Although the Spartans, let's just flip it there. This is kind of the last question I asked you, but those young Spartan boys, do you remember what they were encouraged to do to get food? Steal it. But don't get caught. because you're a loser if you get caught. So they would intentionally not feed them enough. They would intentionally not give them enough food so that, and some of you, especially the young men in here, I mean, we're all, when you're young, maybe you want to eat a little more, but young men notoriously start eating quite a bit as they start growing rapidly. Having 2 sons myself, and I can attest to large amounts of food that are eaten. So, you know, they don't give them enough, and they say, good luck finding something, and they have to go steal it out of someone's garden, but they will be beaten. They will be beaten if they are discovered stealing. But they don't have any choice because they're hungry. And so, I have never read this, but this is Mrs. Ferguson's connecting the dots. If the Spartans are out on military campaign, they're not going to have any qualms about pillaging the countryside to get food. Do you know what I mean? Whoever lives there. And they're probably really good at it. Plus, if Spartans showed up and wanted my cows, I would give them the cows because they're scary. But yeah, so it's either provided or they just steal it. Yes. And they might get mad at me and beat me up asking where the cows are. So we read the famous story of the young Spartan boy who stole a fox. I don't know if he was going to eat the fox, but you know what? If you're hungry, I feel like there's a level of hunger where you will eat almost anything, if you know what I mean. And so he had the fox, and he has it under his cloak, and somebody stops him. And so as not to reveal that he has stolen this fox, it just claws and eats out his belly and kills him under the cloak. He would rather be eaten alive by the fox rather than say, you got me, it's a fox, I stole it. That tells you something about the level of punishment that was going to happen, you know, if he got caught. So, yeah, these guys were tough as nails. I mean, they were known for holding up under any level of hunger or thirst or cold or pain. So Emma, you mentioned, I think you mentioned last night, what's the famous story that what do mothers say to their Spartan children? I think you mentioned this last week. Do you remember? What? About their shields. Oh, do you? Oh, what?
I think I did.
Oh, was it you, Bryn?
Yeah, because I don't remember.
Oh, okay. What was it, Bryn?
Should come home with your shield, come home on your shield.
Yeah. Spartan mothers say to their sons leaving for battle, you better come home with your shield or you come home on your shield. In other words, being carried on it dead. In other words, you better not throw it away. You don't throw it and run. Don't you even think about it. So I brought a couple of things. This is a part of a statue. This is called the Dying Warrior. It's actually in a temple. Put it in front there. It's in a temple on an island just off near Athens, called the Dying Warrior, and there he is with his shield. Try to get up, but he can't. But he didn't lose his shield. But there's another interesting thing. In a museum in Athens, I was amazed when I saw this. And actually, we'll talk maybe a little bit about this story when we get to it. But there's a museum in the Agora, which is sort of the marketplace, the ancient marketplace in Athens. And in the Agora was this. I know it's a little distracting because it's all my Greece pictures. But, okay, this is the picture I want to look at. This is a shield. It's a Spartan shield. Someone lost it. Someone didn't come home with it or on it. Look at it. The sword, what caused it to be dented up like that? Somebody hitting it with a sword or a spear over and over again. Holy cow. That's rough. Do you see this dented? Do you see how dented it is? Does it have a glare for you guys? Is that better? You see how dented it is? How about you guys? Could you guys see it back there? How about you guys, Preston and Emma? Could you see it sort of from where you were when I showed it? This was a Spartan shield. taken from a famous war that we're going to talk about in a little while. They even wrote poems about it. And I brought in this book of Greek poems. I'm not going to read the whole book. But they had a famous poet named Tyrtaeus. I'm going to read the whole thing. And let each guard with broad protecting shield his thigh and legs, his shoulders and his breast. And let him his powerful spear with right hand wield, and shake above his head the dreadful crest. Let each who bears a buckler learn to fight, doing brave deeds, nor from the conflict go. But rushing close, let him essay to smite, or with long lance or sword the meeting foe. Foot placed against foot, buckler with buckler closed, while breast, crest, helmet touch. Let him fight well against the men opposed, and his sword's hilt or spear shaft try to clutch. But yon light troops dispersed along the field, yet near the well-armed ranks, assail the foe, and from behind the shelter of a shield, each ponderous stones or polished javelins throw. They even wrote poems about it. There was another guy, I didn't mark this, but I should read this too, who had a different take on it. He's kind of famous for being a little snarky. And he wrote this. Thracian is somebody from Thrace, all right? Some Thracian strutteth with my shield. For being somewhat flurried, I left it in a wayside bush, when from the field I hurried. All right, good targe, but I got off. The deuce may take the shield. I'll get another just as good when I next go afield. The character in this poem left his shield in a bush so he could run away. And he said, I'll get another one. I'll get another one just as good. That wasn't very heroic of him. That was not the opinion of most Spartans. It was you come home with your shield or on it. So they had a guy named Lycurgus. And we're not even totally sure if Lycurgus is a real person or sort of an amalgamation of several people. But he made laws for Sparta, basically all the laws you read about, all the rules. And how did he learn, this was the third question I asked you, how did he learn to make good laws for Sparta? Yeah, Bryn. And what did he do as he traveled? Mm-hmm.
He used the other laws and built off his own.
Yeah, he looked at how other people ruled themselves, and he jotted down the best of the best. And I don't know how you feel about the laws, if you feel like that truly would be the best of the best. How did he feel about money? Does anybody remember? What are the Spartans going to use for money?
Iron.
Iron. And why iron?
Because you couldn't really save it up.
Yeah, because it's worthless. It was kind of worthless. Gold and silver, are worth something. He's like, you know what? We're not going to have money except iron. And if you want to go buy something expensive, you're just going to have to take a whole wheelbarrow full of iron to pay for it. So nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. Not to mention that you're not going to go to Athens or Thebes or Corinth and buy fancy stuff because you don't have any money. They don't take iron in Athens or Corinth or Thebes. You can't go buy fancy stuff. Just the same, he told them they couldn't, polish the timbers that their house was made of. They're just kind of hewn with an axe and all rough. Because who has a kind of not very nice house and is going to put fancy furniture in it? It'd look kind of funny. He's like, we're going to live very, very simply. Now, here's my question for you. What's the point of everybody living a hard, simple life? What do you think, Emma? Definitely humility.
They'd all be working and they wouldn't be busy comparing and saying, my neighbor has this and I want it.
That's true. So it keeps you humble in respect to your neighbors, right? And you're not going to try to compete with them. Sometimes we do that, don't we? Well, can I say sometimes I do that? and I won't accuse you. Somebody else gets something nice, and instead of saying, I'm really happy for you that you got a nice thing, I think, oh, mine isn't that nice. I wish mine were nicer. And then you start thinking about how not nice yours is and how you wish you could get a nicer one. You see, and now I'm distracted, right? And I'm not training for battle anymore. Yeah, Christian.
Another reason why they did not have nice things is because they got used to rough surroundings.
This is another important reason. If I'm going to spend a big chunk of my life, and remember, if you are Spartan, you are the army. Not the ladies, although the ladies also worked out. Because they thought that having tough ladies, they would give birth to tough children. Right? So they just all around tough. But the men were the army. It wasn't like they had this group of men over there and they're the army and they wait for there to be battle. No. If there's a war with someone, if there's a battle, you're all going. All the men. You're all going. So you might as well get used to living rough. How many of you guys like to camp? Do you go out camping like in a tent?
I don't like going camping.
See, I don't either. Maybe for the same reasons, because I'm not Spartan.
I can't traumatize them.
I want a nice bathroom. And I want some decent food. And I don't want to get cold at night. And I don't want to have to go out in the rain. I'm very not Spartan. But if you are going to live in a tent for 4 months or 6 months, imagine going camping for 6 months. I think even those of you who raised your hand and said you like to go camping, you might stop liking camping somewhere along the way. Maybe not, but maybe so. But if you're used to it, you never have anything nice. You always sleep on the floor. Doesn't seem like a big deal. So you're ready. You're ready for it.
But the roof might leak too.
What? Say again.
The tent might be leaking, but the roof at home leaks too. So
Oh, well, maybe you have more options at home, though, to get away from the leak if you have a small leak. So like Kyrgyz said, we're going to have 2 kings and a council. It sounds, he said 2 kings, but then I read things like this. The Senate or council consisted of the 2 kings and 28 other men who were elected as senators for life. And they proposed laws. And then it says every Spartan citizen over 30 years of age was a member of the assembly. And they got to vote on the laws. So when we hear they have kings, we think, oh, the kings just bossed them around.
I think they
Not so.
name their kings differently.
Well, they were in charge. You know what their biggest job was, though, Bren? It was to lead the army. The kings led the army, and so they were, like our president is the commander-in-chief, so he makes military decisions, but he doesn't usually get dressed up and grab a gun and go out in front of the battle lines because we value him too much. We don't want him to get killed. Well, you know what? They did. They famously, we're going to read about a famous story of losing one king. Yeah, Luke, what were we going to say? Oh, just a second.
Your king would be dead.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, what were you going to say, Luke?
So, like, the 28 senators, would they go out to battle?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody goes, every Spartan man is going to battle. And even the older ones. I mean, unless you're so old you can't get around. They'd rather have the youngest and the fittest, because even if you take good care of yourself, we can't help it. When you get older, you slow down a little bit. But yeah, even the older Spartan men, because they were always in shape, right? They aged well. So they were out there, yeah. Kings, council, everybody. So I asked you if you would enjoy growing up in Sparta.
No.
Why specifically, Christian? Is there something they do? We already talked about stealing and being eaten by foxes. That's Exhibit A. Okay. What do they do? What do they do with the boys?
They sent them to a Spartan camp when they were 7.
Yeah. When you're 7 years old, you don't get to live with your family anymore. They take you away. And you know what, gentlemen? You will never live with your family again. And I mean even when you're grown up and marry. You'll never really live with your family. You will just kind of visit. You will always live sort of in like permanent barracks. And you will be tough. You will be tough. But you won't really have family to speak of. Yeah, and then they'll put a teenage boy over you, right? To basically quiz you all the time and watch you when you're exercising and then beat you if you don't do a good job. Nice. Nice. What? And then even when you're grown up, you don't ever get to eat with your family, like I said. All the Spartan men eat together in a big cafeteria. And in fact, if you eat at home, unless you're really ill, and you need to just eat some black broth at home or whatever. Unless you're ill, if you don't show up for the meals, people are going to think you're just sneaking food in on the sly and eating, like donuts and stuff, some fancy food, and they're going to come after you if you don't eat with everyone else. Yeah, it was really, really rough. Every year, the older boys were whipped in public before the altar of Artemis in order to teach them to endure pain without crying. And sometimes they beat them to death. Because it would be hard to know how much damage you're doing if they don't yell or, Yeah, they beat them to death. And then the ever popular, this isn't about childhood so much as their general attitude towards humanity. Those helots we were talking about, every once in a while, I'm about to tell you an awful, awful story. I think Dorothy Mills didn't put it in there because it's like PG-13, not suitable for children, but I'm going to tell you anyway. They would invite like the most competent, best, smartest looking helots to a big festival and meal to reward them. But it was really to weed out the ones that seemed strong and could rebel. And they killed them. Or every once in a while, they would just go out into the countryside where the helots were farming, and they would just indiscriminately kill a bunch of them to keep the population down. You don't want there to be too many. It's very much like Pharaoh throwing the baby boys into the Nile, right? To keep the population down so they don't rebel. Same idea. Yeah. It's brutal. So we might be glad that Western civilization that we're heirs to decided the Spartan road was not really the road we wanted to walk. We like the Athens road.
Yeah.
The Athens road seemed much better than the Sparta road because Spartans, I'm telling you, if you're in battle, you want a Spartan guy by your side, right? They're good. But living with them or living in that environment, not so good. Spartans were very difficult to deal with. And one interesting thing, we have no Spartan, well, I read this poem from Tyrtaeus. We have very little Spartan literature because they didn't have time, right? I'm always training or fighting or stealing or what have you. I don't really spend a lot of time thinking lofty thoughts and writing literature about it. We have tons of Athenian literature because they did spend all their time thinking about that. Although they were very in shape too and good fighters when it came to it. So next week, I would like you to read the next chapter. It's chapter 6, and it's called The Growth of Athens. So you can write that next to, and on the top of the page, the next page on page 9. And it's got several sections, but we're reading the whole chapter, just the whole chapter called The Growth of Athens for next week. And we'll see how they're different. I already gave you a clue, but hopefully you will like the way they live a little bit better, perhaps. Before we talk about our Greek myths, I thought you might enjoy this. This is just for kicks. I brought the Greek alphabet in. Some of you might be familiar, in mathematics, higher mathematics, somebody was talking about pi earlier. Was it? Oh, okay. Which is a Greek letter. We often use Greek letters in mathematical notation, but it's just kind of cool to see, and it tells you the lowercase and the capital, what it's called, and then what it sounds like, right? And they give you an English word. And then on the back is the Lord's Prayer in Greek, because I just thought you might think it was cool to see some Greek. You can, I'm not going to bother to read it, but you can go online and listen to people reading it, you know. Anyway, and interestingly, some of my Latin students might like to know the first word is pater. It's the same word as in Latin, pater, our Father, pateremon, our Father. Okay, so this is just for kicks. I feel like this doesn't look like I have enough. 3, 4. Oh, you know what I did? This is the pile for tomorrow, and I put your pile on there. I only have enough for tomorrow. I'll bring it next week. All right, since you weren't going to do anything with it except check it out. All right, I'm sorry. Ask me next week. Where's our Greek? Yes, ma'am. Oh, did you have a question? You looked questiony. Yes. 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 Chapter 6. The growth of Athens. And then you're also going to finish the Greek myths book. But let's spend the rest of our time, except we have to do our poems. Let's forget this. I don't know, it's like the best part, and I forget. Okay, I've chosen 2, specifically for today. Childhood in Sparta. Living in Sparta was tough. Life was brutal and rigid and rough. Young boys were trained early to fight, forbidden to read or to write. They slept on some mats on the floor. Their whole life was training for war. They often were hungry and cold. Their elders thought this made them bold. I'm sure that we can all agree that Sparta was no place to be. And, because we read about Medusa. Pretty creepy. Medusa had only bad hair days because snakes grew right out of her head. They writhed, they slithered, they hissed, they coiled. Medusa filled people with dread. Medusa had one other problem. It tended to keep her alone. If people should happen to look at her face, they instantly turned into stone. Medusa. All right. Thank you for humoring me. You all seem, I feel like I'm being humored slightly when I read the poems. All right. This week, you read about a couple named Baucis and Philemon. And was their chapter called Baucis and Philemon? Yes, Baucis and Philemon. And does anybody remember what they did? Or what their story was about? It's not one of the most exciting. It doesn't involve being turned to stone or riding on flying horses or, killing anything. It's the chapter called Baucis and Philemon.
Page 129.
Yeah, it starts on page 129. Thank you. Does anybody remember what they did?
Oh, yeah, were they the old couple who let Zeus and
Hermes?
They let them do what?
they let them stay at their house?
They let them stay at their house. Did Zeus and Hermes look like Zeus and Hermes?
No.
They did not. They looked just like some homeless people. I don't know. Sometimes we misjudge people, don't we? It might be easy to misjudge people.
Have you ever heard of
No. The cowboy in the what?
Continental suit?
And the continental what?
Suit.
Suit. Oh, no, I do not know this song. I do know there's a famous singer that died last year, and you probably don't know him, so it doesn't matter. Jimmy Buffett. But anyway, okay, Jimmy Buffett. He died, and so he was well known for being just super nice, but he was a multi-millionaire, Anyway, so after he died, all these stories came out about him being nice to people, just like not waiting around for thanks or anything. He was just this sort. And one guy said, I was on the dock. We were in Florida. We had this boat, and the weather was bad, and we were waiting to go out. And my dad was grumping all the time because we couldn't leave and go on our little trip. And my mom got sick of listening to him grump, so she took some food and she just went and sat out on one of the docks and waited for the wind to get better, right? And so this guy comes along, and I don't know, he looks a lot of hobo-ish, you know, and he sits down and he's just chatting with her. And so she offers him some food, and he's like, okay, you know, and they snack. And like sits there a couple hours and talks to this lady. And she's like, well, I gotta go because it looks like the wind's dying down. My husband's going to leave. It's great. And so he gets back, and apparently her son had seen this. She's like, Mom, do you know you just had lunch on the dock with Jimmy Buffett? He's like, oh, I thought he was a homeless man. I tried to give him some food because I thought he might be hungry. And he was probably richer than anyone else on that dock. So you never know. You never know who might be behind those clothes, right? Does that idea appear in the Bible anywhere?
Yes, I think
What are you thinking of, Emma?
there's this one thing that said, like, something like mankind, where some people have entertained angels without even realizing it.
Some have entertained angels. It's in the book of Hebrews, I believe.
I think? Yeah.
And one specific instance of this is, well, I mean, there's lots of specific instances, I guess, but Abraham once had 3 people just show up at his camp, if you remember. And it was 2 angels. It was apparently a pre-incarnate Jesus. If you're familiar, it's called a theophany, like when Jesus appears in the Old Testament, but he hasn't been incarnated yet. Anyway, and he tells him he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and everything. And Abraham doesn't know who these people are, but he runs off immediately. He's like, kill a goat, make some bread, get it ready, get him some food, sit down. And it says he waits under a tree to serve them. Thinking, Abraham's a rich guy. And these are just nobodies, but they're not nobodies. They're angelic. And so, you know, angels visit Lot, right? And warn him that Sodom and Gomorrah are going to be destroyed. And he brings them in. So we see this a lot in the Bible. But there's something that I find particularly interesting. Oh, before we leave that, what does the Bible say that every stranger is sort of in disguise? If we feed a stranger, we fed Jesus. If we give a stranger water, we gave water to Jesus. That's what he said. He said, if you do it for the least of these, you've done it for me. He said it. But there's a funny side to the story as well. So if you remember, they invited Zeus and Hermes in, and they didn't have much, but what they had, they gave. And finally, they noticed that sort of like the wine never ran out and the food never ran out, and they suddenly realized that there were gods here, that some sort of miracle was happening, and they were terrified. They're like, no, you guys are awesome. Say Zeus and Hermes, what do you want? And we're going to reward you. You're so hospitable. They said, well, you know, we would like to be in charge of a temple for you. Could we be like a priest and priestess of a temple? Like, done. What else would you like? Well, we really, really love each other, and we've been married for a really long time, so could we just die together at the same time so one of us doesn't have to be left alone? It's like, done. So after a long, wonderful life serving in this beautiful temple, they die together, you know, and they don't have to be alone. It's lovely. What about picture life in the ancient world? Okay, so we don't have cars. So if I'm traveling, I'm probably walking, right? Or I'm riding on an animal. Or, you know, I have a cart or something, you know, and horse pulling it. But I'm going very slowly. And I have a limit to how much supplies I can bring along, right? And maybe there aren't hotels. You know, there's not a Holiday Inn on every corner, right? Or Super 8 or whatever. And so can you see how being hospitable might be really super important in a world like that?
Yeah.
Because if people aren't hospitable, what's going to happen to you? Yeah, you might run out of food if no one will help you out. You might have to sleep outside when it's really cold or really, really hot. Cold would probably, people get used to hot, right? But you can freeze to death when it's cold. And so hospitality was a big thing among the Greeks. In fact, Zeus was known as the god of strangers. So there's a famous story we're going to read, but you probably know something about a guy named Odysseus meeting up with a monster called the Cyclops. You might know something about that. And this is something he blamed him for. Odysseus asked the Cyclops for food and help. And I will, okay, don't shout out the answer in case somebody doesn't know the story. But I will just tell you, the Cyclops did not offer them food and hospitality. I'm not going to tell you what he did, but he didn't do that. He was not hospitable. But that was an important thing to them. And then this is the fun part of this story. The area where they were, the story, I don't know if this version says it, but they're over here in this area, Phrygia. Lydia and Phrygia over here, right? It just so happens that many, many years after this story was happened or made up or whatever, there were a couple of men traveling through this part of the world. They were Christian missionaries, and their names were Paul and Barnabas. And Paul and Barnabas showed up at a particular town, and the townspeople yelled out, "Oh, oh, oh, it's Zeus and Hermes. It's Zeus and Hermes." And I think Paul must be Hermes because he does all the talking. And maybe Barnabas is Zeus. And they're like, we'll come into our home. We'll make a nice dinner for you. And it happened in the same part of the world where Baucis and Philemon story happens. And so I can't help but wonder if the people who live there are thinking, oh, we'll get some good stuff out of these guys. I think the gods have come to earth and they're visiting us and we better be hospitable. Yeah, Christian, what were you going to say?
The reason why they thought they were gods is because they thought that he healed them.
Yes, because they had power. They had power. Just like Zeus and Hermes. So this is a fun connection, I think. What?
In my opinion, it's a pretty wrong reason to be hospitable.
Well, it is. It is. In a perfect world, we would be hospitable because it's the right thing to do, right?
In a perfect world, no more.
You know what? It is not a perfect world. And I feel like if I just do it because I think God told me to, I don't really want to, but I'm doing it to be obedient, that he accepts that, right? That's good. Okay, what other story did I want to? Oh, Perseus. Okay, now this is a fun one, right? Because we got flying horses and we got, or is this Bellerophon? Bellerophon's with the flying horse, though. Perseus has the winged sandals, and Perseus has the head of Medusa, and I love the end when the king's like, I don't think you really brought back the head of Medusa. It's like, oh yeah? Yeah, awesome. Do you remember how Perseus's story started? Like, how did he grow up? Let me find the story. Medusa's head. Yeah, Christian.
Well, what a great birth. Okay, so as soon as he was born, his grandfather sent him out in the chest.
That's mean.
That's very mean.
That's mean.
Oh, it's Grandpa.
Yeah.
I remember correctly. Hang on. The king of Argos sent Perseus' mother a newborn baby out into the sea,
Mm-hmm.
and then washed him up, and then on the sea, and let the king's brother care for both of them.
Yeah, yeah. And they wash up on this island, and it says they're found by a fisherman and taken to the king of the island, and it says, Danae was made a servant in the palace. I mean, Danae is royalty back home. But here, she's a servant. And Perseus grows up as a servant boy. In other words, the people there don't know who he really is. Can you think, this is a very popular plot. In fact, it's so popular that it's called the foundling myth. A foundling is like we talked about how the fact that sometimes they would throw out their children in the ancient world when they didn't want them. If a baby is deformed or you can't afford to feed them, you just throw them out. You just put them out in a field somewhere in the woods, and whatever happens, happens. But people would sometimes pick them up, right? And if you were a bad sort of person, you picked them up and enslaved them, raised them enough till you could sell them. If you're a good sort of person, you just adopted them. But that's a foundling. A foundling is a child just sort of left. And they apply this term not just to that sort of thing, but any young man who grows up and other people don't know who he is. And maybe he doesn't even know who he is, but he's destined for great things. Can you think of another story? And I'm not searching for one because there's so many. A young man in a situation, he's really going to be important, but he seems like a nobody.
Think of a book.
What do you think of one, Amelia? Hercules. Hercules, they don't know initially that he's the son of Zeus. All right. It doesn't have to be a Greek story, by the way. Yeah, Grace. Jesus is the ultimate foundling story. Nobody knows who he, I think Mary knows. Mary doesn't understand everything from the get-go. I don't think she understands that he's going to die the way he dies, but she definitely knows something's going on with my son, right? She better than anybody. But everybody else, even his family members, like, who's this? What does he think he is? What's the deal with that? Nobody knows who he is. He's the ultimate. Can you think of another one, Christian?
Isn't Perseus the son of Zeus?
Yes.
Yeah, Danae, he came in a shower of golden rain. Think about that too hard. And then it was rain gold, and then she got pregnant. Emma, you got one?
Harry Potter?
Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a wonderful example. He is key to bringing down Voldemort, and he doesn't know who he is. He's living in a closet under the stairs. He doesn't know he has powers. He doesn't know who he is, but he's going to end up being very, very important. So I mentioned,
Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker, that's exactly where it's going. I mentioned earlier that James Earl Jones had died yesterday, who was the voice of Darth Vader. And Mufasa from The Lion King, who's 93 years old. An amazing voice. What a voice. Luke Skywalker. He doesn't know who he is. He's living on a moisture farm on Tatooine with his, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. And he's Darth Vader's son. He is going to be the takedown of the Empire, right? But he doesn't know it. Joseph is just like one of the youngest of the sons of Jacob. He's going to save all their lives. He's going to be second to Pharaoh someday. And they, try to kill him and they sell him. It's like, oh, you're just a dud. Oh, hold on to yours, but I just thought of another one. Does anybody remember where in the family order King David was in his family?
Youngest?
He's like, they all come in front of Samuel. They all come in front of Samuel. And God's like, not that one, not that one, not that one, not that one. And Samuel's like, do you have any more kids? Yeah. That little one, he's out with the animals in the pastures. Like, bring him. And it was David. What was your idea, Bryn?
There's two. There's Aiden Arrowson, that's basically the same thing as Saul.
Okay.
As in the Bible, David. But there's Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, that's very good because we have historical. It doesn't have to be made up. Abraham Lincoln was kind of a backwoods nobody who almost the only education he got for himself. He had to work really, really hard to learn everything he did. And he is revered as probably one of our best presidents and kept the Union together. Kept us from splitting into two countries. But he was a nobody. Yeah, Emma.
Now that we're talking about history, one of the thoughts is Albert Einstein. People are saying he was on a spectrum and he had a hard time concentrating in class, but he's one of the smartest people that we know so far.
Do you know, that's a very good point, because I've heard that they told his mother that he was unteachable, Einstein, because he really didn't fit into, what was normal. He had such an imagination, obviously. Yeah, he didn't fit in, so like, you'll never amount to anything. Really, he's Einstein, yes.
George Washington Carver.
George Washington Carver, poor black man who revolutionizes the lives of black people after slavery was ended, and showed them how to do a billion things with peanuts, which is amazing, yes.
Helen Keller.
And Helen Keller, who has inspired so many people, was a very intelligent woman. So, you guys can think about that. You got another one, Christian?
Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman. All right. So we would sometimes call this the underdog, right? If you're familiar with that term, the underdog means the person who looks like they should lose, but they really are the winner. Perseus looks like a loser, but he's really the winner. And all those others, the foundling myth. Yeah, okay. Give us one more, Christian.
Brock Purdy.
Who?
Football player.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. When you go to sports, I will not know. But that doesn't make it not a legitimate thing, but Grace is making a face. So I don't know. Okay, that's awesome. We will not, maybe we'll talk about some of the other stories. We didn't get to talk about Meleager and Atalanta. That whole, his mother burning the log on the fire to kill him because he killed his uncle. Oh my gosh. It's a terrible story. Finish the story, finish the book, and you will get to Theseus and Heracles. Heracles is Hercules in Greek, right? That Greeks call him Heracles. It's the same guy. All right, Hercules, Heracles, same guy. And so you're basically going to read two really long stories that are more involved, two of the most famous stories. We'll talk about those and maybe some of the other ones as well. Write me a story. Remember, I want to see an outline. And I want to see a simile, and alliteration is going to be optional. But we'll throw it in the next one, since I'm asking you to do several new things here. Read The Growth of Athens, the next chapter. And that's it. And finish the book. And I will see you next week. And let's practice today, even though they're not up there. When you go up and leave, just go quietly. Don't have conversation, a loud conversation with the other. Oh, the Bible study is up there? Oh, okay. Oh, Emma, can I talk to you for just a minute?
Oh yeah, what's wrong?
Nothing is wrong. And I just want to assure you, your stories are the best stories that anybody gives me. And I don't really foresee ever making you rewrite the whole thing. And you totally know how to punctuate everything. And you totally know how to do a complete sentence. So everything I said, do not worry that something is directed at you, because you give me everything I ask for. But I promise to be honest with you. All right? Like if